most important thing I wish I knew when I started was a director was talking about how they didn't have enough film stock. And it's like, oh, he knew which shots he wanted. So he wanted like a close-up here, he wanted a mid-shot there, whatever. So that's what he shot. And I remember one of my first projects, I was like, oh, no, I know exactly what I want. I want this, I want that. And nobody was experienced enough to tell me any, none of us knew what we were doing. So we just did that. Then we get to the editing and you just realize the sound. Like the car is in the close-up, but now when you go, you know what I mean? So I wish that guy just said, but remember the sound part, So I think when people are imparting knowledge, I think it's important to impart like the full picture because someone might be listening. I sort of never came to it with any expectation other than to learn. So part of that learning was watching and listening to directors. And then I'll take that and go and, with my friends, we'll try and do something. So I studied drama at the University of Cape Town. And while I was at drama school, I realized pretty quickly that while acting is fun, I really loved telling stories. So I used to walk around campus like with this camera and then just shoot, So I gradually tried to teach myself. And then when I graduated from school, I got my first acting job and I used that money to pay for my first professional short film. That was kind of the process of how I got started. At the moment, I'm in post-production on 2 new projects, 2 new films. Last year, I was very fortunate to be able to direct 2 films. So one is called Via, and the other one is called A Hotel Called Memory. So we're currently in post on both. As a writer, director, actor, producer, it all goes back to drama school and the idea that you got to create your own work. So I've always enjoyed the directing, producing aspect of our industry more because you have more of a say in what you get involved in. Whereas as an actor, you're helping other people's dreams. You're playing characters that you probably might never write in your own films, or you know what I mean. So I would say the directing and the producing has always been number 1. So I'm inspired by people who do great things. So I think sometimes people talk about feeling intimidated by others' success. I'm the opposite. I get inspired by people's success because I go, wow, this person did that. That's the quest always. If somebody has something new, I'm there. I want to see it. I want to know what's going on. If there's a book to be read, if there's a podcast to listen, whatever it is, I dedicate the time because obviously, and I always tell this to young people as well, is that a lot of people want to do what we do. So that means every day there's somebody who's trying to get in, which is great. You need more people. But it also means that you have to be continually either reinventing yourself or you need to be relevant, not stagnate, creative, and I think creative people go through ups and downs. You read about musicians when they talk about other great musicians, they go, oh, I went to watch whatever Jimi Hendrix play, and then I never played, I didn't play the guitar for like a year because obviously that guy was genius, so I had to go and think about what I'm going to do, And in that case, that's inspiration as paralysis. But for me, there's inspiration as I'm so inspired, I'm gonna make sure I don't get there, I'll get as close to that as possible. So, and it can come from everywhere. The turning point for me was very early in my career, and it was around my first feature film, God is African.
And anyway, I resent the fact that just because I was at the radio station last year, you think you can ask me anything about the radio station this year? I'm only here because I failed. Yes, we all know ancient history by 2 marks. We don't have to rub the thing in.
I'd made 3 short films, and in the time, the sort of progression of the directors that I was looking at overseas was like they would do some short film, then they'll do their feature film. So we felt that after 3 short films, it felt like let's step into that. When I look back now, that film, that experience, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And these were the things that I learned, was never to compromise. So on that film, there was a lot of compromise. And it was the kind of compromise where when you look back, you're like, oh, I actually didn't have to. And in God is African, a lot of times, some actors weren't present, because obviously you're not paying people, so that's another thing, right? There's a difference, because if they're doing you a favor, that means they don't have to show up. There's no recourse. So So that was the first thing, that if somebody is doing you a favor on your project, you have to be very clear that the minute you agree to it, you actually have to treat it as a contract. The vision is really important. So the first thing was the thing about favors. The second thing was the thing about the ability to not compromise and not lose your vision. And that ownership of your films are important. And I think those three things were a turning point. And even after God is African, I didn't make a feature film for about 11 years. But it was important that when I started making feature films again, that I wasn't going to repeat the mistakes of God is African. And it really is kind of what I've stood by till today. My experience on Lord of War and Blood Diamond were really great. Coming back to Compromise, Lord of War, there was a shot that they hadn't got. And I was like, I'm sure they're gonna drop the shot. And they got the shot. Like they didn't leave, you know what I mean? Like there was, even though it seemed chaotic or whatever, they got the shot. And I don't know, I think those things are really important, that people are not compromising on that level. I think you should start making your own films from the jump. I think the moment you decide to become a director or writer, so I would say to anybody, like, if you want to do it, you have to start doing it. There's no one, people will join you as you go along, as they see that you're serious, but people have to see that you're serious because there are far too many people who are not serious. Either people who want to make films, and even people who want to fund films, because everybody likes the idea. But then the minute they realize, oh, it's not just red carpet, you know what I mean? Then that's what separates. I always think that's what separates people. They stop for whatever reason. I used to wonder, why did that guy or that woman, why did they make that film, one film, and then you never hear from them any, and now having made a few films, I know why. Because it is a tough business. Is it as tough as open heart surgery? I don't think so, but it's tough. And that's the thing. People need to understand that it is tough. So I encourage people to start immediately, so you know whether do you have the stamina to go all the way, or do you need to stop and rest along the way. So the best advice I've got, there've been probably three things that I've kept, but the one that has always resonated the most was there was an older filmmaker who said, "This business is a marathon." I always say that to young people that I meet. I say, it's a marathon. And if you can accept that it's a marathon, then you can accept everything that comes with it. And once you can accept that, then you can be in a better space to deal with the frustrations, to deal with the ups and downs which are going to come. I always say, everybody's going to tell you no. Your job is to take the no and counter it with a yes. Because if it is as easy as someone saying, no, you can't, then you shouldn't be in the race at all. So you have to be able to overcome that. So my father said, write what you know. And even though that means the stories can be varied, there has to be a personal connection for me. There has to be something personal. Personal attachment is important. It doesn't mean that for everybody, but it doesn't matter what you're doing. There should be something personal that you can find in the piece. And then the last thing is be bold and don't be scared.